Good Times once told the story of the Evans family, poor but always holding on to dignity, laughter, and hope amid the Chicago housing projects. Yet 50 years later, that optimistic light did not follow them into real life. Many cast members passed away amid illness, loneliness, or poverty, while those who survived took paths no one could have predicted. So by 2025, what truly happened to the cast of Good Times? Let's find out. Esther Rolle as Florida Evans. Esther Rolle was born November 8, 1920, in Pompano Beach, Florida. She was 54 years old when she played Florida Evans, a strong, strict, yet deeply loving mother who fought to preserve her family's dignity amid poverty and social injustice in Good Times in 1974. Rolle became the moral soul of one of America's most controversial sitcoms. This role was not merely acting. It was a statement of her values and her life philosophy. But that commitment came at a heavy cost. She repeatedly clashed with producers as she watched the scripts increasingly turn JJ into a caricature, overshadowing the message about African-American family life that she was determined to protect. The prolonged struggle left her mentally exhausted, forcing her to act while simultaneously standing guard over community values. That tension spilled into her private life. Her marriage to Oscar Robinson collapsed in 1975, leaving Rolle with a profound sense of loneliness, compounded by the fact that she had no children. She threw herself into work as a form of self-defense, continuing to appear in Maude and other more serious television projects, but the psychological toll became increasingly evident. In the years that followed, diabetes loomed as a constant shadow. Prolonged stress, a relentless work schedule, and isolation caused Rolle's health to deteriorate rapidly. By 1998, severe complications forced the amputation of part of her leg, a brutal blow to a woman who had long embodied strength and dignity. In her final months, she lived quietly, far from the spotlight. Ultimately, on November 17, 1998, Esther Rolle passed away at the age of 78 from complications related to diabetes in California. Her funeral was held according to her wishes at her hometown AME Church, and she was laid to rest at Westview Community Cemetery, a historic burial ground for people of color. Her estimated net worth was around $2 million, a modest figure compared to the immense spiritual legacy she left behind. The image of a mother who refused to compromise human dignity. John Amos as James Evans Sr. John Amos was born on December 27, 1939, in Newark, New Jersey. He joined Good Times in 1974 at the age of 35, portraying James Evans Sr., a strict, hard-working father and the emotional backbone of the Evans family. Though young compared to the image of a middle-aged patriarch, Amos brought a rare sense of authenticity and dignity to American television at the time. That very authenticity pushed him into a professional tragedy. Amos openly objected to scripts he believed demeaned black people, especially as the character JJ was increasingly turned into comic relief. His confrontation with producers ended with his firing in 1976, and James Evans was written off the show through an on-screen death, a shock both professionally and psychologically. The incident branded Amos as difficult to work with and forced him to start over. His role as the adult Kunta Kinte in Roots restored his artistic credibility, but the wound left by Good Times never fully healed. Amos's personal life fractured alongside the pressure of his career. His first marriage to Noelle Mickelson collapsed just as his professional life faltered. His second marriage to Lillian Lehman was brief and emotionally draining. Years of prolonged stress, compounded by diabetes and heart failure, steadily eroded his physical health. His later years were overshadowed by severe family conflict, culminating in a 2023 elder abuse lawsuit, later withdrawn, that exposed the deep fractures behind the public image of a model television father. On August 21, 2024, John Amos passed away at the age of 84 from congestive heart failure in California. His death was not announced until nearly a month later, leaving the public stunned. His remains were quietly cremated a few days afterward. His estimated net worth was around $3 million, including real estate and a film legacy, a subdued ending for a man who paid a heavy price to defend truth and dignity on American television. Jeanette DuBois as Willona Woods. Jeanette DuBois was born August 5, 1938, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At 36 years old, she played Willona Woods, the sharp-tongued, humorous neighbor who brought constant positive energy to the Evans family in Good Times in 1974. On screen, Willona embodied laughter and freedom. Off-screen, DuBois stepped into the role while her personal life was already deeply fractured. An early marriage ended, leaving DuBois a single mother raising 4 children, an enormous burden in expensive Los Angeles. By day, she filmed. By night, she worried about bills, children, and the lonely voids left after the lights went out. Financial pressure forced her to work relentlessly, even as Hollywood largely confined her to familiar comedic roles. During this period, she appeared on Good Times while also pouring her energy into writing and performing Movin' On Up for the Jeffersons, a joyful song born from years in which she had to constantly motivate herself not to collapse. The greatest tragedy struck in 1987, when her son, Raj Christo Gupta, died of cancer at the age of 36. The grief did not explode outward. It seeped slowly over many years, leading DuBois to keep working as a way to avoid confronting the loss. She voiced characters on the PJs in the late 1990s, still laughing into the microphone, while her heart carried permanent damage. At the same time, heart disease progressed quietly, the result of decades of stress, sleeplessness, and accumulated emotional pressure. On February 17, 2020, Jeanette DuBois died at her home in Glendale, California, from cardiac arrest at the age of 82. Her estimated net worth was around $2 million, largely from acting and music, modest compared to the vitality and joy she gave the world. Willona Woods brought laughter to a poor neighborhood. Jeanette DuBois paid for that laughter with a lifetime of endurance. Johnny Brown as Nathan Bookman. Johnny Brown was born on June 11, 1937 in St. Petersburg, Florida. He joined Good Times in 1975 at the age of 38, playing Nathan Bookman, the overweight, loud, and humorous building superintendent. The character delivered instant laughs, but also inadvertently boxed Brown into a single image for the rest of his career. After his initial success, Brown fell into a cycle of typecasting. Hollywood could only see the jolly, overweight superintendent, leaving no room for serious roles despite his solid theater background. The feeling of being left behind as his co-stars moved forward became a long-lasting psychological burden. He continued taking roles to maintain an income, appearing intermittently on The Jeffersons and Sister Sister, but each appearance reminded him that his creative range was steadily narrowing. Brown's greatest anchor was his more than 60-year marriage to June Russell. When she passed away before him, the loss shattered his last emotional barrier. Loneliness in old age coincided with worsening heart disease. Brown lived dependent on a pacemaker, battling declining health while continuing to work under financial pressure to support his family. The laughter he brought to the screen could no longer conceal the exhaustion accumulating within. On March 2, 2022, Johnny Brown collapsed shortly after a cardiology appointment and passed away in Los Angeles from heart failure at the age of 84. His estimated net worth was around $1 million, including his Los Angeles home and a legacy in comedy. It was a quiet ending for a man who spent his entire life making others laugh, even as his own heart gradually wore out. Ben Powers as Keith Anderson. Ben Powers was born on July 5, 1950, in Brooklyn, New York. He was 28 years old when he portrayed Keith Anderson, a promising football player and the husband of Thelma Evans. Keith symbolized the upward aspirations of the young working class in Good Times in 1978. Ironically, while he embodied a hopeful future on screen, Powers's real life began to slide downward. After Good Times and a brief stint on Laugh-In, Powers was unable to sustain his momentum. Being repeatedly passed over for leading roles plunged him into a prolonged sense of professional failure, quiet but persistent. That pressure soon seeped into his marriage to Julia Harper, a family life that appeared stable but was constantly strained by financial worries and career insecurity. Powers continued to appear in a few projects, such as Things Are Tough All Over, but each small role only deepened the feeling that he was being left behind. By the mid-1980s, disillusionment reached its peak. Powers left Hollywood in 1985, carrying an unfinished dream and a heavy sense of self-blame. He wrote screenplays, composed unpublished poetry, and spoke to students as a way to hold on to meaning in life. Then liver cancer emerged, quiet but devastating, prolonging a silent battle between physical pain and the fear of becoming a burden to his wife and children. On April 6, 2015, Ben Powers passed away at the age of 64 in New Bedford, Massachusetts, from end-stage liver cancer. His remains were cremated. His estimated net worth was around $500,000, primarily from a small home and the remnants of his artistic legacy, a subdued ending for the man who once represented the youthful dream of good times. Louis Gossett Jr. as Uncle Wilbert. Louis Gossett Jr. was born on May 27, 1936, in Brooklyn, New York. He appeared on Good Times in 1979 at the age of 43, playing Uncle Wilbert, a calm, seasoned man who brought emotional balance to the Evans family. The role was small but mirrored his real self. Composed on the surface, turbulent within. Few knew that at the time Gossett was entering the most devastating period of his personal life. 3 consecutive failed marriages plunged Gossett into prolonged loneliness just as the pressures of fame intensified. After Roots and the heights that followed, he spiraled into addiction to alcohol and cocaine, both to escape the psychological scars of racism he endured in his youth and to withstand the expectation that he must always appear strong. Rehab attempts followed one another, but shame and the fear of being seen as weak led to repeated relapses, even as he continued working on projects such as An Officer and a Gentleman. Illness arrived as an unavoidable consequence. Prostate cancer, followed by COPD, heart failure, and cardiac arrhythmia. Gossett chose to hide his conditions, continuing to work as if his health did not exist, fearing the loss of the Iron Man image the public believed in. In his final years, he lived quietly, retreating from the spotlight and battling illness in silence and isolation, a fate starkly opposed to his former glory. On March 29, 2024, Louis Gossett Jr. passed away at the age of 87 in Santa Monica, California, from COPD complicated by heart failure and atrial fibrillation. His remains were cremated. His estimated net worth was around $10 million, including real estate and an artistic legacy. But the emotional cost he paid to survive Hollywood history outweighed any number. Moses Gunn as Carl Dixon. Moses Gunn, born October 2, 1929 in St. Louis, Missouri, appeared on Good Times in 1977 at the age of 48, portraying Carl Dixon, a cultured, composed man and the romantic partner of Florida Evans. Carl Dixon represented maturity and emotional depth rarely seen amid the chaos of the housing project. Behind that image stood a great stage artist who constantly felt marginalized. Gunn entered marriage with Gwendolyn Mumalandis while his theater career was at its peak, but that success brought prolonged absences from family life. He toured relentlessly, rehearsed endlessly, and performed night after night, leaving his wife and children in long stretches of absence. Though he appeared in works such as Shaft and Roots, the sense of being confined to supporting roles in Hollywood created a quiet psychological erosion deeper than any public criticism. At the same time, chronic asthma, a condition he had carried since childhood, worsened under an exhausting work schedule. Sudden breathing attacks struck even while he stood on stage, forcing Gunn to hide his physical collapse to avoid losing roles. He continued working as though rest were a privilege not meant for him, until his body could no longer endure. On December 16, 1993, Moses Gunn passed away in Guilford, Connecticut, at the age of 64 due to complications from asthma. His estimated net worth was around $1.5 million, largely from his stage and television legacy, a modest figure compared to his artistic stature, yet one that faithfully reflects the life of a great talent who lived and died quietly. Helen Martin as Weeping Wanda. Helen Martin was born on July 23, 1909, in St. Louis, Missouri. She was 65 years old when she portrayed Weeping Wanda, a woman who was always crying, bringing laughter while quietly revealing an underlying sadness in Good Times in 1974. Wanda was not merely comic relief, but a portrait of elderly lives forgotten by society. Painfully, that image mirrored Helen Martin's own life. She never married and had no children, devoting her entire life to her craft from the harsh world of Broadway in the 1930s, when opportunities for black women were almost non-existent. Though she once stood on major stages and later became known through Good Times, every departure from the set led her back to an empty home. Fame arrived late and never erased decades of loneliness, with work remaining the only lasting relationship she could rely on. As age advanced, heart disease began to erode her strength, yet Martin continued acting as a matter of survival. She appeared in 227 as Pearl Shea, once again embodying an older woman both humorous and bitter, followed by elderly roles in Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. These performances made audiences laugh while simultaneously reflecting her own life. Always present for others, but rarely with anyone truly present for her. On March 25, 2000, Helen Martin passed away in Monterey, California, at the age of 90 from a heart attack. Her estimated net worth was around $1 million, including her California home, and an artistic legacy built over more than 6 decades. A quiet ending for a woman who spent her life bringing laughter and sorrow to the stage while living in solitude herself. Richard Ward as Henry Evans. Richard Ward, born March 15, 1915, in Glenside, Pennsylvania, appeared on Good Times in 1975 at the age of 60, playing Henry Evans, the father of James Evans, a man burdened by abandonment, regret, and a belated desire for reconciliation. The role was brief, but left a heavy emotional echo, and it served as a somber reflection of Ward's own life. Ward married Peggy Ward, but the marriage gradually fractured as he was forced to immerse himself in work simply to survive. Prolonged financial pressure pushed him into back-to-back television roles on The Jeffersons and various crime dramas, leaving almost no time to rest. Constant busyness distanced him from his daughter, and family ceased to be a refuge, becoming instead a source of quiet anguish. Though he had been praised on stage for Death of a Salesman, that acclaim was not enough to shield him from financial insecurity. After separating and living alone, Ward continued working into his early 60s, appearing in projects such as Starsky and Hutch, even as heart disease quietly wore down his body. In his final years, he lived in a state of prolonged exhaustion, where each role was no longer passion, but a means of survival. His health deteriorated in silence, never granting him the chance to rest. On July 1, 1979, Richard Ward died suddenly in Coxsackie, New York, at the age of 64 from a heart attack. His estimated net worth was around $500,000, largely earned through relentless labor in his final years. A tragic ending for a man who gave everything until his very last breath. Thalmus Rasulala as Ernie Harris. Thalmus Rasulala was born on November 15, 1939 in Miami, Florida. He joined Good Times in 1975 at the age of 36, playing Ernie Harris, a calm man who brought a sense of stability amid the turmoil of the Evans family. On screen, he was a pillar of reassurance. In real life, however, his existence was marked by fracture and strain. Rasulala went through 2 failed marriages. His first marriage to Martha Roberts, married in 1960, divorced in 1977, left him with 3 children and years of unresolved tension. In 1984, he married Sherlyn Mozingo, but the financial burden and responsibility of supporting a total of 7 children kept the household under constant pressure. Despite standing out in roles such as Blackula and Roots, inconsistent income forced him to work non-stop, erasing any boundary between personal life and professional survival. The prolonged stress quickly manifested in his health. Rasulala continued appearing in films like Cornbread, Earl and Me, and numerous television projects, even as heart disease began showing warning signs. He barely allowed himself to stop, because stopping meant losing the ability to provide for his family. His body deteriorated quietly, amid relationships already fractured and beyond repair. On October 9, 1991, Thalmus Rasulala passed away suddenly in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at the age of 51 from a heart attack. His estimated net worth was around $500,000, leaving behind a respected artistic legacy and a life worn down by the combined pressures of family, work, and failing health. Matthew Beard as Monty. Matthew Beard, born on January 1, 1925 in Los Angeles, California, appeared on Good Times in 1975 at the age of 50, portraying Monty, a broken drifter who served as a living warning of lives crushed by time. The role required few lines because Beard's face alone told a complete tragedy. That tragedy closely mirrored his real life. Once a celebrated child star in Our Gang during the 1930s, Beard grew up under premature fame only to plunge into despair as an adult. As roles dried up, he fell into heroin addiction and cycled repeatedly through prison for theft and drug offenses. Those years erased any chance of stability, leaving Beard homeless and cut off from both family and society. He had no lasting marriage and no publicly acknowledged children. His private life nearly collapsed entirely. The only true turning point came when Beard voluntarily entered Synanon for rehabilitation. He escaped heroin, but his body and spirit were already severely damaged. The small roles that followed, including Good Times and later the Buddy Holly story, were not enough to heal a lifetime of ruin. In early 1981, Beard suffered a stroke, fell down a staircase, sustained severe injuries, and soon developed pneumonia, a cascade of calamities in a body already exhausted. On January 8, 1981, Matthew Beard died in Los Angeles at the age of 56 from pneumonia following a stroke. He was buried at Evergreen Cemetery, beside the derby hat forever associated with his character Stymie. His estimated net worth was around $100,000, a heartbreaking figure for a man who had once supported his entire family with the fame of his childhood. Teddy Wilson as Sweet Daddy Williams. Teddy Wilson was born on December 10, 1943, in Harlem, New York. He joined Good Times in 1976 at the age of 33, portraying Sweet Daddy Williams, a charming, streetwise ladies' man whose carefree banter concealed an inner emptiness. The character quickly became an unforgettable highlight. Sadly, Wilson's real life followed a similarly draining trajectory. Wilson was once highly anticipated after signing with Norman Lear's production company, but his biggest setback came when the series Sanford Arms was canceled early, triggering prolonged financial instability. That pressure spilled into his personal life. Wilson had 3 children, Theodore Jr., Robert, and Nicole, 2 of whom, Robert and Nicole, he shared with actress Joan Pringle, his partner and co-star. The relationship collapsed amid infidelity and ongoing tension, leaving Wilson largely burdened with the responsibility of being the family's sole provider. To support his children, Wilson worked relentlessly, appearing in shows from The Golden Girls to Family Matters, even as his health sent increasingly dangerous warnings. He underwent open-heart surgery but did not slow his pace. His body was drained by a packed filming schedule, financial pressure, and relationships fractured beyond repair. On July 21, 1991, Teddy Wilson passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 47 due to stroke complications after years battling heart disease. His estimated net worth was around $500,000, most of it left to his children. A tragic ending for a man who made audiences laugh while paying the price with his health and personal life. Alice Ghostley, as Ms. Dobbs. Alice Ghostley, born on August 14, 1923 in Eve, Missouri, appeared on Good Times in 1977 at the age of 54, playing Hortense Dobbs, a clumsy, offbeat woman who always seemed out of place. The character was humorous, yet carried a quiet, genuine sadness. That shadow followed Ghostley throughout her career. Ghostley realized early on that she would never be cast as a leading lady. Despite acclaim on Broadway and a strong impression as Esmeralda on Bewitched, Hollywood viewed her as too odd, too unconventional. After Bewitched, she continued appearing on Maude and One Day at a Time, mostly in brief supporting roles that came and went. Later success on Designing Women finally brought recognition, but it could not erase the lifelong feeling of standing at the edge of the spotlight. In her personal life, Ghostley shared more than 50 years with Felice Orlandi, a solid marriage without children. When Orlandi died in 2003, an overwhelming emptiness set in. In the years that followed, she suffered multiple strokes, with noticeable declines in memory and physical strength. Though she still tried to appear in small projects such as The Golden Girls, each shoot became a battle against her own body, fought amid loneliness and illness. On September 21, 2007, Alice Ghostley passed away in Studio City, California, at the age of 84 from colon cancer and complications following multiple strokes. Her estimated net worth was around $1 million, closing the life of an artist who made millions laugh, while often enduring her struggles alone, in silence. Jimmie Walker as J.J. Evans. Jimmie Walker, born on June 25, 1947, in Brooklyn, New York, joined Good Times in 1974 at the age of 27, playing J.J. Evans Jr., the energetic young man whose catchphrase, "Dynamite," ignited pop culture. The character propelled him to the peak of fame in a very short time. But that glare of success also marked the beginning of a long, drawn-out tragedy. JJ's success quickly became a psychological burden. As the character was increasingly turned into a caricature, Esther Rolle and John Amos protested fiercely, leading to internal conflict and their eventual departures. Walker remained famous, starring in films like Let's Do It Again and appearing frequently on television, but he carried a lingering sense of guilt. He was the one who stayed, the one audiences adored, yet also the one many felt had shifted the show's original message. In his personal life, Walker never married, had no children, and chose an independent path. He continued doing stand-up comedy, touring across the United States, using laughter to mask a persistent loneliness. Later appearances in Airplane and Scrubs helped sustain his visibility, but they did not fill the emotional void. Walker has admitted that he was unable to attend Esther Rolle's funeral because it was too painful to confront the past. By 2025, Jimmie Walker is 78 years old, still alive and continuing to perform stand-up comedy. His estimated net worth is around $10 million, derived from stand-up and royalties, but that success has come with a solitary private life, where laughter echoes on stage, while behind the scenes he stands alone, facing his memories. Bern Nadette Stanis as Thelma Evans. Bern Nadette Stanis was born on December 22, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York. She joined Good Times in 1974 at the age of 21, portraying Thelma Evans, the intelligent, educated daughter who embodied the Evans family's aspirations for upward mobility. Thelma was beloved for her maturity and dignity, yet that same glow unintentionally placed Stanis into a mold she would struggle against for decades. After Good Times ended, Stanis quickly confronted typecasting. Hollywood continued to see her only as Thelma and rarely offered opportunities beyond that image. She appeared on The Cosby Show and The Parent 'Hood, but mostly in guest roles that were not enough to create a breakthrough. As her career stalled, Stanis entered an even heavier emotional period, caring for her mother, who suffered from Alzheimer's disease. Watching her mother's memory slowly disappear became a prolonged pain that deeply shaped her psychology and her perspective on fame. Stanis's marital life was also marked by upheaval. She first married Thomas Fauntleroy, 1974 to 1978, then Darnell Johnson in 1979. Both marriages ended while she was still very young. Her third marriage, to Terence Redd, brought her a daughter, Dior Ravel, but the pressure of balancing family and career again led to divorce. Only after marrying Kevin Fontana in 1981 did Stanis find relative stability, later welcoming a second daughter, Brittany Rose. Alongside motherhood, she turned toward writing, publishing several books on relationships, finances, and especially works deeply influenced by her family's experience with Alzheimer's. By 2025, Bern Nadette Stanis is 72 years old, still alive, continuing to participate in community events and to write. Her estimated net worth is around $6 million, stemming from acting, publishing, and speaking. A life lived quietly after the spotlight, built on perseverance, family responsibility, and the silent losses behind the image of television's perfect daughter of the 1970s. 50 years have passed since Good Times, yet the smiles on screen concealed countless losses, loneliness, and silent battles behind the scenes. When the studio lights went out, who truly found peace, and who paid a lifetime's price for a defining role? Which actor's fate surprised you the most? Leave a comment, hit like, subscribe, and share the video so we can continue exploring the untold backstage stories of television legends together.